The Netflix animated series, Trese, based on the comic book of the same name, is a supernatural horror based around the creatures of Philippine mythology. The series follows Alexandra Trese, the Lacan and protector of humanity, as she strives to keep the balance between humans and the supernatural. While this is a concept that's been done before, a world filled with magical creatures protected by the Chosen One, Trese leans heavily into the horror genre, which makes sense given the number of murderous and bloodthirsty creatures that exist in Philippine mythology. Seriously, why do you guys have so many different kinds of vampires? But just how much does the Trese series borrow from mythology? Let's take a look and find out. The White Lady of Balete Drive in Quezon City is one of the most popular urban legends in the Philippines. This white-clad apparition is said to appear on Balete Drive late at night, where she flags down passing cars trying to get a ride home. Once she arrives at her destination, however, the driver looks back to discover that she has vanished. While this may seem like a pretty basic setup for a ghost story, what's really interesting is that the White Lady of Balete Drive shares several elements in common with two other ghostly phenomena, the Lady in White and the Phantom Hitchhiker. While the Lady in White, a female spirit in a white dress, has been sighted in a number of different locations throughout the world, phantom hitchhikers are always found wandering the roadside and can be broadly divided into four categories. The conventional address-giving ghost, who usually disappears before reaching their destination, the prophecy ghost, who gives the driver a warning about their future, the memento ghost, who takes an item from the driver that reappears later on, often at the hitchhiker's grave as proof of their story, and finally the goddess or tutelary being that serves to protect the driver from unforeseen peril. While most tales of the Phantom Hitchhiker ends with the driver discovering their passenger's tragic fate, often a car accident, the White Lady of Balete Drive has a number of different origin stories, and there seems to be no consensus as to which one came first. In the Netflix special Trese After Dark, the writer of the Trese comic book, Bujet Tan, I am so sorry for butchering your name, said that he wanted to give the White Lady of Balete Drive a solid origin story, which is why the show identifies her as Gina Santos, a young woman who committed suicide after she was rejected by her lover. The tree that gives Balete Drive its name also appears throughout the Trese series, often in connection with spirits and other supernatural phenomena. The Balete tree's association with the supernatural is another element that the series adapted from Philippine folklore, as it's believed that spirits often dwell within these trees and inflict harm upon anyone who dares to tamper with their home. Throughout the series, Alexandra Trese is referred to as a Lacan. But what exactly is a Lacan? Well, prior to Spain's takeover of the Philippines, Lacan was a term used to address male nobility. So wait, does this mean that Alexandra is actually the ruler of the human race in Manila? I mean, given what we see in the show, it makes sense. She inherited the title of Lacan from her father, not unlike a royal title. All these supernatural beings in the show treat her with respect and try to stay in her good graces. She refers to herself as the protector of her people, aka humans, and there's even a picture of her and her mother in what I can only describe as princess dresses. Or the word Lacan has a very different meaning in the Trese universe, and I'm just overthinking things. Yeah, that's probably it. In the first episode, we learn that Alexandra's mother is a babaylan, a word that can be translated as priestess, though this translation fails to communicate the important role of the babaylan within the traditional culture of the Philippines. According to Filipino historian and anthropologist Zeus Salazar, the babaylan was the central personality in ancient Philippine society, the spiritual and political leader, the vanguard and bearer of knowledge in the fields of culture, religion, and medicine, a proto-scientist, the first specialist in the social sciences and humanities, who took care of religious ritual and the mythology of the community, and an administrator who also assisted the leader, or Datu, in running the community's political affairs. While male Babylon did exist, most Babylon were women, and knowledge associated with the role was passed down from mother to daughter. However, after Spain conquered the Philippines in the 16th century, the Babylon were rejected by the Spanish colonizers, who rebranded them as Mangkukulam, witches that use black magic to harm the innocent. However, despite the church's best efforts, Babylon still exists today, though their power and political influence has been greatly diminished. I decided to group these two together because I couldn't find that much information about them. Goddess of the Manobo people, Ibu is the queen of the underworld, which is located at the end of the Pillars of the World. In the show, Ibu's emissary is responsible for escorting the souls of the dead to the underworld, using the Manila MRT, which could be a reference to stories about sailing to the underworld. In many Philippine myths, the soul is ferried across the ocean to the underworld using a boat, and the MRT line, referenced in episode 1, crosses over the Pasig River, which empties out into the ocean. A primary antagonist in the Trese series, Talagbusao is a war god that originated from the Bukidnon people of the southern Philippines. Though considered a lesser deity working under Magbabaya, the highest-ranking deity of the Bukidnon people, his desire for battle and bloodshed was unmatched, earning him the title God of Calamity. Talagbusao could possess warriors and give them strength in battle, but his excessive need for blood could also drive them insane. Santalmo, a giant talking fireball, is one of Alexandra Trese's allies, an important weapon in the fight against evil. But what's most interesting about this member of Team Trese is that it may actually be rooted in a real-world phenomena. The supernatural origins of St. Elmo, or St. Elmo's fire, vary considerably. While some people believe that the mysterious floating fireballs are the souls of people who've drowned or been murdered, another belief posits that the St. Elmo phenomenon is caused by flying fiery salamanders streaking across the night sky. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. While this is certainly a creative explanation, modern scientists posit that the St. Elmo myth is actually based around ball lightning. These balls of light, though rare, can sometimes be sighted during thunderstorms, a common occurrence during the monsoon season in the Philippines, and have been recorded in a variety of colors, including blue, orange, and yellow. While the cause of ball lightning is still uncertain, historical documentation of the phenomena goes back centuries, with one of the earliest accounts coming from 1638, when a great ball of fire came crashing through the window of an English church. I guess St. Elmo was really eager to attend Mass. Yeah, I know that was terrible. Aswan is a term that can be applied to a number of different creatures in Philippine mythology. For instance, creatures like the manananggil, a bat-like creature that on the night of a full moon removes the lower half of its body and takes to the skies in search of prey, and the tik-tik, a bird shapeshifter that drinks the blood of young children, can fit under the label of a swan. This makes a one-to-one comparison between the Aswan of Trese and their mythical counterparts a bit complicated, but let's start by laying out what we know. While we don't learn much about the Aswan clan in the Trese animated series, beyond their appetite for human flesh and ability to morph into vampiric abominations from hell, Volume 1 of the Trese comic book gives us further insight into the world of the Aswan. According to the notes of Alexander Trese, Alexandra's grandfather, the Aswan have the ability to shapeshift into different animals when hunting for prey, most commonly a dog, wild pig, bat, or bird, and can be created through the performance of a ritual where a willing human must swallow a black chick whole. That's gotta be a choking hazard. This description bears a passing resemblance to the Aswan shapeshifter, a flesh-eating creature that often hunts in the guise of an animal. According to the Encyclopedia of Vampire Mythology, the Aswan's shapeshifter can be created through the performance of a magical ceremony, which can only be reversed through the intervention of a Mana Nambal, a traditional folk healer. Because there is a separation between the world of the Trese comic book and that of the animated series, it's uncertain if we will ever see the Aswan display these traits in the Netflix series. Though I guess that's a question for Season 2. Nuno's full name is Nuno Sapunso, which literally means Old Man of the Mound, a reference to his preferred place of residence, an abandoned ant or termite mound. However, in both the comic and Netflix series, Nuno can usually be found popping his head out of a manhole cover, a location that aligns much better with Trese's urban setting. The phrase that Alexandra uses to summon Nuno, Tabi Tabi Po, is used to solicit permission from the Nuno Sapunso when passing his mound, and can be translated to mean "excuse me" or "I mean you no harm." People who forgo this tradition, or who damage the Nuno Sapunso's mound, are believed to fall victim to a mysterious illness, which can only be remedied by asking for the creature's forgiveness, usually with the added incentive of food, because as we all know, there's no greater motivator than food. The Tikbalang is generally described as a man with a horse's head and hooves in place of feet. While I was unable to find any stories about the Tikbalang drag racing, most myths depict them as tricksters that love to lead travelers astray, while many modern ghost stories have them appearing on dark roads to terrify unwitting drivers. For travelers looking to avoid an encounter with a Tikbalang, the easiest solution is to turn your shirt inside out and loudly ask them to leave you alone. Taming or enslaving a Tikbalang, on the other hand, can only be accomplished through plucking one of the longest hairs from the Tikbalang's mane, which, given the creature's incredible speed, strength, and ability to stomp people into the dirt, is probably not a good idea. In episode 3, we meet Amang Paso, talent agent and member of the Duende race, who Dr. Maximo Ramos described as spirits of the fields, spirits of the hills, and people of the ground. If this definition seems a bit vague, that's because the term Duende can be applied to a number of different creatures across the Philippines, many of which share common attributes, including their small size and elderly appearance. Some people even include the Nuno Sapunso as a member of the Duende family, something that Alexander Trese also references in Volume 1 of the Trese comic book. Amang Paso's appearance matches that of the typical Duende, an old man with the body of a child wearing a hat, though in Amang Paso's case, his hat may actually be a part of his head. Amang Paso's name also denotes his connection to the earth, as it can be translated as Old Man of the Flower Pot, a reference to Amang Paso's home in the series. Cultivating a relationship with a Duende was seen as a good thing, as those that did would often become successful, though anyone looking to strike up a friendship with a Duende should keep in mind that this is a lifelong commitment, and that breaking said commitments will most likely result in death. I guess the Tiyanak wasn't the only thing that Nova had to worry about. The Tiyanak has a complicated history. While modern pop culture tends to depict the Tiyanak as an undead infant, either an aborted fetus or a baby who died before it could be baptized, this version of the creature doesn't seem to predate the Christianization of the Philippines. When Spain took over the Philippines in the early 16th century, they took issue with the island's pantheon of gods and mythical creatures, opting to alter the country's folklore to help keep it in line with Catholic sensibilities. Rather than an undead infant, it's believed that the pre-Christian Tiyanak was a monster who could shapeshift into a newborn baby to lure in its prey. While walking through the forest, unsuspecting travelers would be drawn to the sound of the Tiyanak's cries, only to become the creature's next meal. Elements of both the Christian and pre-Christian Tiyanak can be found in the Trese animated series, as this interpretation of the creature is a reanimated infant that was left to die in the woods. though Alexandra explains that the baby did not come back on its own, but was revived by a spirit that possessed its body. Like in many Cheonok stories, the creature seeks out its mother, but its attempt to gain closure, or possibly revenge, it's never made clear, is cut short, leading to an ending that's both gratifying and far too good to spoil. Anton Trese's protectors are Sigbin, a supernatural shapeshifter derived from the lore of the Visayan people. While the series depicts them as large dogs, it's believed that the Sigbin can appear in any form, and have the power to become invisible, though the light of a waning crescent moon will negate this ability. Not unlike their masters, the Aswan, the Sigbin prey on humans, particularly children, and can suck their victims dry by biting their shadow. Probably not the best people to have hang around your teenage daughter, though maybe Anton's Sigbin prefer the more humane alternative of eating charcoal. Well, that was my overview of the magic and mythical creatures in the Trese animated series. Okay, maybe I left out a few minor characters due to a lack of available research, but feel free to bug me about that in the comments section. However, if you like this video, feel free to show your support by leaving a like or a comment, and I hope to see you all next time.